Acharya S. noted the similarities between Moses, the Hebrew lawgiver, Manu, the Indian legislator, Minos, the Cretan reformer, and Mises, who also had tablets of stone upon which laws were written. Allegations that Moses was just another fictional character cannot be supported by credible sources, just as other accusations revealed earlier. Acharya S.'s source is Deceptions and Myth of the Bible by Lloyd Graham, published in 1991. This book is also a terrible reference which has no original source material. It has been said that the Ten Commandments have been taken directly from the Egyptian Book of the Dead. All this proves is that the law of God is written on the souls of people. Throughout history, ancient civilizations have defined right and wrong, good and evil. Some have been very close to God's holy standard of truth, while others have been morally destitute and perverse. As the Apostle Paul wrote, "For when the Gentiles, which do not have the law, do by nature the things contained in the law, these, not having the law, are a law to themselves, which show the work of the law written in their hearts, their conscience also bearing witness, and their thoughts the meanwhile accusing or else excusing one another." In other words, we all have knowledge of God's universal and moral law. All humans have a common concept of what is morally right and morally wrong, such as murder, stealing, lying, and committing adultery. Justin Martyr, a 2nd century Christian defender, wrote, "When we say that Jesus Christ was produced without sexual union, was crucified and died and rose again and descended to heaven, we propound nothing new or different from what you believe regarding those whom you call the sons of Jupiter." He also wrote, "And if we even affirm that he was born of a virgin, accept this in common with what you accept of Perseus." Justin Martyr was raised in a pagan home and was familiar with Greek philosophy. All these passages suggest that Justin Martyr is simply attempting to convince skeptical pagan audiences by parallels that would be familiar and communicable to them. He was also attempting to convince the Roman emperor that Christian teachings and claims were not that different from other religions that enjoyed Rome's protection, while Christians were being persecuted and killed for their beliefs. J. Gresham Machen, a New Testament professor at Princeton Theological Seminary, stated, "When Justin Martyr refers to the birth of Perseus as a birth from or through a virgin, he is going beyond what the pagan sources contained. There seems to be no clear evidence that pagan sources used the word virgin as referring to mothers of heroes, mythical or historical, who were represented as being begotten by the gods." Justin Martyr also wrote, "From what has been already said, you can understand how the devils, in imitation of what was said by Moses, asserted that Proserpine, or Persephone, was the daughter of Jupiter, and instigated the people to set up an image of her under the name Cora, i.e., the maiden, or daughter, at the spring heads. For as we wrote above, Moses said, 'In the beginning God made the heaven and the earth was without form and unfurnished, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters.' In imitation, therefore, of what is here said of the Spirit of God moving on the waters, they said that Proserpine was the daughter of Jupiter. And in like manner also they craftily feigned that Minerva was the daughter of Jupiter, not by sexual union, but, knowing that God conceived and made the world by the Word, they say that Minerva is the first conception, which we consider to be very absurd, bringing forward the form of the conception in a female shape. And in like manner, the actions of those others who are called sons of Jupiter sufficiently condemn them." Justin did not argue that the demons or the devil copied Christian beliefs beforehand, but rather they copied the older Jewish beliefs. The simple fact that there are parallels between Jesus and other figures, including people in the Bible like Joseph, does not make either of them fictional. The documentation for a historical Jesus is actually much more compelling than the documentation for other ancient figures like Confucius and Buddha. If liberal scholars applied the same arbitrary standard of rejection of historical evidence to other ancient historical personages besides Jesus, such as Julius Caesar or Alexander the Great, they would be forced to reject all history as myth. 42 authors mention Jesus within 150 years of his life. 9 traditional authors of the New Testament, 20 early Christian writers outside the New Testament, 4 heretical writings, and 9 secular or non-Christian sources. On the contrary, only 10 authors mention Tiberius Caesar, the Roman emperor, during Jesus' ministry, within 150 years of his life. The ratio is 42 to 10, yet we do not doubt the existence of the Emperor Tiberius Caesar. Such historical documents confirm that Jesus was executed as a criminal under the authority of Pontius Pilate, who ruled Judea under the reign of Emperor Tiberius. History provides proof that the Christians who began in Judea spread through the Roman Empire and suffered great persecution for their faith, and that these Christians derived their worship and religion from the person known as Christ, or the Messiah. Tacitus was governor of Asia in AD 112 and was known as the greatest historian of ancient Rome. In his Annals of Imperial Rome, Tacitus wrote about Emperor Nero's persecution of the Christians. He says, "To suppress therefore the common rumor, Nero procured others to be accused, and inflicted exquisite punishments upon those people who were commonly known as Christians. They had their denomination from Christus, or Christ, who in the reign of Tiberius was put to death as a criminal by the procurator Pontius Pilate. This pernicious superstition, though checked for a while, broke out again, and spread, not only over Judea, the source of this evil, but reached the city of Rome also." Lucian, a Greek writer of the latter half of the 2nd century, spoke scornfully of Christians and Jesus, never assuming or arguing that Jesus was unreal. Lucian said, "You see, these misguided creatures start with the general conviction that they are immortal for all time, which explains the contempt of death and voluntary self-devotion which are so common among them. And then it was impressed on them by their original lawgiver that they are all brothers from the moment that they were converted, and deny the gods of Greece, and worship the crucified sage, and live after his laws. All this they take quite on faith, with the result that they despise all worldly goods alike, regarding them merely as common property." Suetonius was the official historian during the reign of both Emperor Trajan and Adrian. Speaking of the Emperor Claudius, who ruled from 41 to 54 AD, he wrote, "He banished the Jews from Rome, who were continually making disturbances, Chrestus being their leader." The name Chrestus is another spelling for the name Christ, or Christus. This statement confirms the passage in the book of Acts chapter 18, verse 2, about the exiling of Jews from Rome during the reign of Claudius. Suetonius also recounts punishment by Nero was inflicted on the Christians, a class of men given to a new, mischievous superstition. Suetonius confirms that Christians were suffering and dying for their conviction that Jesus had really lived, died, and risen from the dead, a mischievous superstition. Pliny the Younger was governor of the Roman provinces of Pontus and Bithynia in AD 101 to 110. In a letter to the emperor, Pliny the Younger requested specific instructions about the interrogations of Christians whom he was persecuting. He said he made them curse Christ, which a genuine Christian cannot be induced to do. He continued, "They affirmed, however, that the whole of their guilt, or their error, was that they were in the habit of meeting on a certain fixed day before it was light, when they sang in alternate verse a hymn to Christ as to God, and bound themselves to a solemn oath, not to any wicked deeds, but never to commit any fraud, theft, adultery, never to falsify their word, not to deny a trust when they should be called upon to deliver it up."